Good evening, everyone. My name is Nidhi, and I head the marketing team at PEOL Technologies. So this session is organized by PEOL Technologies. Most businesses bleed money in the accounts payable process. As we all know, accounts payable process is an integral part of the business functions. But there are a lot of gaps and challenges that are faced by the accounts payable team. Invoices are received in huge numbers, and though this being an important critical function of the finance department, still there are a lot of gaps and challenges that are faced by the business owners. And all this, the result of this is it affects the profitability of the business, and due to which it has an impact on the overall profitability. So today's session is organized based on our experience with some of our clients, helping some of our clients to digitize their accounts payable process, and how this bleeding of money in the accounts payable process can be significantly controlled. So I would request Mr. Prashant Nagathan. So Mr. Prashant Nagathan, he's the director at PEOL Technologies, and Mr. Prashant PM, he's our group delivery head. So I would request Mr. Prashant Nagathan to share his perspective on what are the challenges that are faced by the accounts payable team, and what are the ways in which business bleeds money in the accounts payable process, and how it impacts the business. So over to you, Prashant.
Thanks a lot, Nidhi. Hello, all of you. This is Prashant Nagathan here, the founder and CEO at PEOL Technologies. And as Nidhi was mentioning, this session is essentially to streamline the accounts payable process across your shared service or within your organization. And essentially, if that is not done, or if these accounts payable process is not addressed in terms of efficiency, in terms of any audit related activities, in terms of leakages, then there would be a direct impact on the bottom line, as Nidhi mentioned. So the best way to check this or arrest this, many a times the organizations may not even know that this is happening, right? So the best way to ensure that there is no bleeding of any of these stuffs, plus there is no what you call issues in terms of that can hit your bottom line. The best way is to ensure that you streamline the accounts payable process. And in order to streamline the accounts payable process, the companies, the enterprises have to understand what the accounts payable challenges itself may be. So it can be challenges in terms of, let's say, managing a large different set of vendors. There are different formats of invoices, or maybe having a huge team sitting, reviewing these invoices, checking the the applicability of various norms, the business rules, and so on and so forth, which may be as part of your ERP, or maybe as part of a business rules engine. So if there are a lot of manual activities, if there are a lot of invoice formats which are different, if there are, let's say, not many business rules applied for, then essentially that may lead to a lot of challenges within the accounts payable process, which essentially will lead to bleeding of the money, as this session talks about. So I will quickly run through first the accounts payable challenges that different user groups, or for that matter, the personas, I would call them as different user groups within an organization may face. And there is a disclaimer here. At the end of it, we are trying to share the common challenges that we have seen across companies and industries. It may or may not be applicable for your organization. So from that aspect, you may be able to correlate with few, and maybe few may be completely different or new for you. So to start with, let's look at what may be the challenges for accounts payable team itself. So it may be a centralized accounts payable team, or it may be a, let's say, shared service team. Essentially, if you typically look at the whole accounts payable business process, what you see is the vendors have delivered their goods or services. somebody from the customer side or from the enterprise side has received those goods and services, you got to check if those services or goods are received, the quality of it, and go ahead and release that particular invoice for payment, in which the first step itself may be to create that invoice into your ERP, may it be SAP, may it be Oracle, may it be any other system. So the largest challenge that we have understood from the enterprises is the manual activity that happens in terms of creation of these invoices itself. Then it can be also missed invoices, for example. When you say missed and lost invoices, many a times the companies face a challenge that the supplier has not delivered the goods or services at a stipulated time, and it's too late in the chain or in the value chain or in the timeline aspect to identify why that happened. And it may stop complete production, it may stop complete projects in itself, or may bring projects into standstill. So many times that is because the payments have not happened. And it may not be because the payments were held, but many times the invoice itself didn't reach the accounts payable team, or even if it might have reached, classic cases in construction industries, the sites might have received the invoices, but the accounts payable central team has not received it. So from that aspect, what we have seen challenges is the invoice itself were not received by the team that should have processed it, and that we call it as missed and lost invoices. So if you have a process in place, if you have a system in place that would ensure that these invoices are never lost, they can be tracked right from the day a vendor or the time the vendor submitted it till the time it got posted into your ERP, or for that matter, the payment was made, then these challenges will not be faced. Likewise, there are various other challenges from accounts payable team. I would not like to go in details. You have a few on the screen itself, maybe duplicate invoices or invoice processing delays itself, or a lot of times that the accounts payable team itself spends on the audit aspect. So let me move on to the next user group that will also face challenges as far as accounts payable process itself is concerned. IT team is no different to this. If someone from IT team has joined this, they would know that essentially when the invoice volumes increase and number of vendors increase, the integration challenges with your backend ERP, right? And whenever there are issues related to audits, IT team invariably gets involved to identify, track what those issues were, and essentially, you end up finding that sometimes the issues were related to wrong entry into the ERP system itself, or it may be related to the integration challenges, or it may be related to the manual process that itself happens. So likewise, the other user group, in this case, it's the CFO's team, they will also have a lot of challenges as far as accounts payable goes. One of them, for example, as I said, it may not be applicable for all industries, is the missed early payment discounts. Maybe depending on industries, volume of the spend that you are doing, the size of the vendor that you are dealing with, many times what may happen is there is an early payment discount. It can be up to 1%, 1.5%, 2%, depending on your terms or the size of the spend that is there. So many times it is not known that there was an early payment discount, and you miss out on getting that discount itself. So again, it leads to your, directly hits your bottom line from that aspect. And one of the most important challenges that we have seen with CFOs is they always want to know what is the cost of processing per invoice. So if the cost of processing per invoice is very heavy for the reasons that we have mentioned in the AP team challenges, and if the volume of invoices is pretty substantial, then you can correlate with the cost that may be incurred to process a huge voluminous invoices. So, and of course, the one more challenge which they face is during the audits and fraud, during the audit trails, right? So the last user group, of course, is the supplier itself, which gets, many times suppliers get ignored, right? But with our experience, what we know is if you involve suppliers as one of the key stakeholders, and essentially ensure that they get a complete transparency or visibility in terms of where their invoices lie. Have they been approved, rejected? Are there any missing documents? Believe me, it ensures that the supplier gives value for the order that you have given him, in terms of ensuring that many times the delivery itself may be early. He himself may extend certain discounts and so on and so forth. Yeah. So let me move on to the next slide. This essentially will tell you what bleeding money means in terms of, if you don't arrest the accounts payable process, if you don't digitize the accounts payable process or automate it. From that aspect, there are many ways in which it can hit your bottom line directly. So these are few, as I said, maybe there may be many more, and not all may be applicable to all of the businesses or all of the enterprises. So if you look at a few ones here, maybe the payments when not due were done, or for that matter, if you had an early payment discount and if you have missed them, right, that is another one. And also, if you look at the last one, manual effort cost with low productivity. So essentially, in a few organizations where we have talked to these companies, may it be the construction companies, may it be the manufacturing companies, they have a pretty substantial, huge set of vendors. And to manage them, they have an accounts payable team sitting centralized. And now, essentially, if this accounts payable team is not enabled with digital options, then they end up making manual entry errors, take a lot of time. A lot of times they internally, stakeholders don't know where the invoices of vendors are lying. And the whole effort itself ends up being a low productive one. So likewise, any of these that you see on the screen, for that matter, can lead to bleeding of money, which would directly impact your bottom line. So let me quickly move on to the next slide. So we have understood here that essentially, if the challenges addressed by different stakeholders as far as accounts payable process is concerned are not addressed, there are leakages, right? There are leakages. And what is the impact of that on business, right? So if you see, these are few of the impacts. For example, delayed or missed payments, or there can be audit delays, there can be duplicate invoices, there can be unpredictable cash flow itself. This is going to hit any of the CFO or his or her team. In fact, if you don't have a visibility that one of your top supplier has a large payment due in the coming month, and if you don't do that, or if you have not provisioned for it, it would not only strain the relationship, but maybe impact the delivery of it in the subsequent days or weeks or months, and essentially hit your bottom line. So from that aspect, if you have a predictable cash flow option available, from that aspect, you will ensure that you will address that your top suppliers are not having some kind of delayed payments, and which would in fact impact your bottom line. Yeah. So let me to ensure that all these challenges are addressed, to ensure that all the impacts that you saw on business can be addressed. What we need is accounts payable automation that can essentially provide a significant cost saving for you guys, for the enterprises, for the companies. It can eliminate the manual tasks or entries that are done. It can motivate the employer, the team itself, to ensure that they can focus on more strategic activities in the organization. And companies can optimize their vendor portfolio. They can have a powerful process or tool to ensure that they can renegotiate with their vendors. And essentially, the challenges related to vendor management in terms of avoiding duplicate or erroneous payments, all that can be addressed. So that's where you will have to, as a leader of the enterprise or as the leader of the organization or the industry itself, you will have to relook at how the accounts payable automation today is a must for all industries. And if you don't do, what is the impact of that on your business, right? So that becomes an essential aspect of your job. Yeah. Yeah, let me move on to the next slide. So these, we have tried to summarize all the good reasons for transforming your accounts payable process, right? So it can be anything from, effort optimization itself to the audit process of tracing all the invoices. As I said, if you know from day one who submitted the invoice, who reviewed it, who approved it, was there a change in the whole process? Did somebody change the process? So if you have an audit trail of your invoices, that becomes one of the good reasons. Likewise, may it be eliminating wrong or duplicate payments, or improving your cash flow in terms of, and or building and improving the strategic relationship with suppliers itself. So likewise, these are some good reasons why you should start thinking towards transforming your accounts payable process. We have tried to summarize the ones which we have come across and where our customers have shared their experiences. So now I would like to hand it over to Nidhi. Nidhi, can you please take it from here? Thanks a lot, all of you.
Thanks, Prashant. Thanks for sharing those insights and giving us an brief on how the process works. All right. So I'm glad to introduce our automated accounts payable process application, ELIPO. So ELIPO stands for Express Lane Invoice Processing Orbit. So it's a digital invoice management application that is, it helps in processing all the incoming invoices automatically in a digital format. It will help the accounts payable team to share, scan, handle exceptions, and with customizable approval processing. So ELIPO helps in digitizing and automating the complete supplier payment process, right from the time the invoice is received from the supplier until the time the payments are processed. So quickly, I'll run you through all as to what are the components of ELIPO. So OCR technology. So there's an OCR technology wherein all the invoices can be automatically read. You don't need someone manually copying the details from your invoices. So let's say the PO number, the quantity, the amount. So all the details will be automatically captured by the OCR. So there's an invoice cockpit. So there's an invoice cockpit wherein the audit history of the invoices is available at any given point of time. So the cockpit is very much flexible. Any user can use it, and on a single cockpit, all the you'll have the invoice history available, and people can see the invoices, route the problems, everything on a single platform. Data validation. So data validation can also be done on the tool itself. You don't want someone assigned, specifically who would be doing this manually. So let's say the OCR could not capture some details. So we have manually, we have an option where people can add those details, and data validation can be done on the tool itself. So ELIPO supports three-way match. Three-way match in terms of the PO, the goods receipt note, and the invoice copy. So you can trigger workflows. So based on the user roles, the authorization roles, the timelines, you can set up the rules in ELIPO. So approval delegation, you can set the approval delegation. So let's say the first level of approval would be the CFO of the organization. Second level would be the head of accounts payable. Third level would be the finance manager. So you can set up multiple or series approval. At a time, 2 persons can also approve. At a time, maybe the CFO and then a head of accounts payable. So these kind of approval delegation can be set in ELIPO. So ELIPO is hosted on AWS Cloud. It supports out-of-the-box integration with SAP, but it can be easily integrated with other ERPs as well. So I'll quickly take you through as to how ELIPO works. So the supplier sends the invoices. So these invoices, when received, are received in huge numbers and various formats. So invoice recognition is done. So all the invoices are fed in a centralized mail ID, wherein the invoice recognition is done. The OCR reads all the invoices automatically. So all the details are captured based on all the details like the invoice number, the invoice copy, the description, everything is captured automatically. So post the invoice recognition, the invoice verification is done. So let's say the OCR missed to capture some of the details. So the cockpit will throw an notification wherein manually you can add those details and you can validate the details on the tool itself. You don't need any manual person, doing that for you. Suppose that based on the rules, so workflows can be triggered. So based on the rules, based on the user timelines, the users, the amount, you can set up the rules in Alipo based on which the triggers, the workflows would be triggered and it would be sent for an appropriate person for the approvals. So exception handling is done wherein you can the audit trails are available, so you can see what has happened to each invoice, where it is pending for approval, who needs to approve it, who all have approved it. So the complete audit trail is available in Elipo. So post this, the invoices are posted for payments. So as you can see, right from the time the suppliers send the invoices until the payments are made, the complete process is automated and digitized. So this is how Elipo works. So we will quickly show you an small demo as to how Elipo works.
Welcome to Alipo. Today I will be showing you how our invoice will be processed using Alipo. As a vendor, I will be submitting the invoices to a centralized mail that is linked with Alipo. So I'll be sending this two invoices for now. Once the vendor has submitted the invoice to the centralized mail, the validator from the customer side receives the notification from Alipo. The validator will log in and see if the new invoices have been generated. I have logged in as a validator where I am in the invoice cockpit. Invoice cockpit is a 360 view of all the invoices that have been received. The new tab shows all the invoices that have been received without making any changes. The draft tab shows all the invoices that have been saved as draft after making some changes. In approval shows all the invoices that have been sent for approval. Rejected tab shows all the invoices that have been rejected by approvers. Submitted to ERP shows all the invoices that have been submitted to ERP with the respective invoice number from the ERP. Moving on to the new tab, the vendor has sent some invoices that have been generated and provided with an internal invoice number. Now if I open this, on the left hand side you will be able to see PDF or the image that has been shared by the vendor. On the right hand side you will be able to see the header data of the invoice that has been captured and some of the fields that have been defaulted. Coming below, we will be able to see the item details that have been captured from the invoice by the OCR. Once the validator checks all the details are correct, he will be able to send the invoice for approval based on the approval rules. Once the validator clicks on send for approval, there are two things happening. One, it does a three-way match, and the another checks for approval and approval is generated. So in this case, there was a approval that got generated. Moving on to another invoice where the OCR has not captured any detail due to reasons like the data is missing in the invoice, or the data is not readable by the OCR, or it is not visible to the naked eye itself. Those fields will be highlighted in the application, as you can see. So here the validator can make those changes. And once the validator has made the corrections, he will be able to send it to approval, or in this case send to ERP based on the approval rules set up. So once the validator clicks on the send to ERP button, the invoice will be directly submitted to the ERP without any approval. And you will be able to see the ERP number generated from the ERP. Moving on to the rules, we have customizable rules where the user can set up the rules based on multiple criterias. So out of the box, we have multiple criterias like amount, department, GL account, or the vendor itself. So based on multiple criterias, the user can set up the approval flow. So we have the approval types single, series and parallel. So we can have multiple approvers, as many as needed. Then we have notifications where we can set up when the notifications have to be triggered. So from the approver perspective, I would like to log in as an approver. Here the approver will be able to see all the invoices that have been sent for his or her approval. So the approver can accept or reject the invoice from here itself, or they will be able to see the invoice completely with all the information. So here they can accept, reject or refer to any other approver. I will approve this invoice. Once the invoice has been approved, it has been sent for next approval. In this case, there are two. I will log in as the second approver. So I'll make the final approval. Once the final approval is done, you will be able to see the invoice number generated from the ERP. From compliance perspective, we have track invoice. Here we will be able to see the status of all the invoices as well as the audit history of the invoices, where I can see the invoice details as well as the audit history. This brings us to the end of the demo. Thank you for your time.